What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. Today, we're going to be sitting down with my buddy Josh Wheeldon. Not only is he a veteran of the United States Army, and I'm so thankful for our veterans. Everybody knows that. Here at Off the Deep End, we like to host stories of what they experience, to put you in their shoes, understand what it's like to lose friends overseas. How do you recover from PTSD? What coping mechanisms are there that are non-negative, that won't destroy you? How do we avoid throwing our issues into alcoholism or drugs or just isolation? How can we ultimately prevent veteran suicide is the goal of sharing these stories. So every single person that is listening to this, I hope you enjoy other people's perspectives. And thank you so much for tapping into another episode. Today we're going to be talking about PNW Vets, the Facebook group that is connecting veteran service organizations and people who just care about another human being with each other. There's nothing better than helping another human being. And I love that vets are helping vets, because who better to understand what you've gone through than somebody who's gone through it themselves? Let's tap in and let's get started. Before we continue, I want to just let you know that here at Off the Deep End Podcast, we do talk about some things that can be extremely triggering for some of the listeners, whether it's domestic violence, suicide prevention, mental health resources, vet resources, veteran stories, active shooters, fitness, and even recovering from addictive substances. There's only one place I go to spread my message of positivity about not just going through things, but growing through them as well. For this, I use Anchor.fm. It allows my listeners to listen on over 7 platforms with a click of a button. Make sure you download Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started sharing your story. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Eddie. Today, joining me is the man, the myth, the Smith and Wesson, or Glock, as I would call him. He is Josh Wheeldon. He is not only the co-founder of PNW Vets, but he's also been organizing so many great interactions between veteran organizations in my local area, and I'm so thankful to have him on. Thank you for joining us, Josh.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, brother. So why don't we start with you telling me a little bit about your military experience, your background, and what led you to try to put together over 10,000 vets?
Yeah, so you always I've been on a couple different podcasts, and the question is, where do you start, right?
Mm.
That's the question, right? So if we go to straight where my military story began, I'd be glossing over a whole bunch of stuff that would probably paint a little clearer picture. So um, when I was just sitting here, kind of writing down my thoughts, what am I going to talk to Eddie about? How am I going to tell him why I joined the military? Um, I compiled a little list of some people's names, and I'm not going to even say their names. What I want to do is tell you I have 13 of um, family, my family, from my grandpa to my uncle. There was 13 of us that served in the military.
Mm.
So just let that sink in. And now I want you to think about this. I have a picture somewhere. I'll have to find it. My grandma's living room wall. There was a picture of all of us. Right. So from my grandpa in Guam in the 50s to my cousin on his aircraft carrier in the 2000s to me in basic training. So there was all these pictures on the wall of my grandma's house. And there's a couple of the people that are like why I joined. I want to share a little bit of information about them so you kind of have a better understanding of why I joined the Army. So, looking at of course, I already told you my grandpa. Then the two of the people that really stick out to me are my great uncle and my dad.
Mm.
So, I'll start by telling you a little about my great uncle. My great uncle, his name's Howard Magnuson. His name was Howard Magnuson. He served in the 401st Bomb Group, the 613th Bomb Squadron in the Army Navy Air Corps, right? And he was a POW. He was on the B-17, the the 42-31037, the pistol packing mamas.
The pistol packing
Right?
mamas. I
Pistol
love it.
packing mamas. And he was a ball turn gunner in World War II. and he was shot down. Right, so he was a ball turn gunner that was shot down on 20 July 1944 over Germany, and
Mm.
he lived to tell about it.
Wow.
Right, so the what's crazy to me is I have a whole newspaper article that my grandma sent me, like with his whole story, and I don't know if you know the rates of ball turn gunners that survived getting shot down in World War II, but it wasn't too high.
Definitely not very high.
Right, and so he moved. They moved. They lived down in town called Nacelle, Washington. If you've ever been to Long Beach, you might know where Nacelle is, but I'm guessing the normal person listening to this has no idea, right? So my great uncle drove log truck. He drove log truck for many years, and I remember a couple distinct parts of my childhood where my sister sprayed him with the hose, and he liked to smoke. He liked some drink, but my sister sprayed him with the hose, and he took off his shirt, and he had some marks on his back from when he was a POW. He was very self-conscious of that specifically, right? So he passed away, had COPD and numerous other things led to his demise, but he passed away a while when I was a kid. And I knew that my great uncle Howard was in the military and he was a POW. So that's pretty solid, right? And then, um, of course, my grandpa, my two cousins, they were like my brothers. They joined them. They all joined the Navy, right? So my dad was in the Navy, my grandpa was in the Navy, my two cousins were in the Navy. So they're in the Navy, and then my dad, he was in the Navy. He was a boiler tech. So he was a boiler tech on the USS Midway,
Ooh.
and so uh, we drove around in the woods hunting for years and years and years, right? Always in the woods. And I was the guy my dad would tell the stories to. So I heard stories of Hong Kong and Japan, probably things like 10, 12-year-old kids shouldn't hear. Like I'm probably not going to tell Maverick about um, stories like my dad told me. But
Yeah.
I learned a thing or two about the Navy, and I learned that you could have fun in other countries, and the like the hazing rituals that happen when people become shellbacks, and
Oh yeah.
you go from a polywog to a shellback to a golden shellback, and I might have told you before, I when I was growing up we had this shellback certificate. It's probably 20 inches wide, 13 inches tall, a big certificate, mounted on the wall at the
Mm.
house. And that was you don't touch that. That's mine, you know, and it's still in the wall at my mom's house to this day. Uh, so all these family members I have, they all kind of set the precedence for me to, well, I tried college, didn't work out. So why don't I join the army or something?
Mm.
So how I got to that point, I went to college over in Yakima, community college. Had all these aspirations. Oh, I'm going to go walk onto the wrestling team. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Now that I think about it, I should have tried harder at football and wrestling. But hey, that's another story, right? Um, so I made it about 2 quarters in college, and I came home. I I didn't do too good.
Mm.
Found uh, found some other ways to occupy my time, and the college grades didn't coincide with those extracurricular activities.
Oh yes.
So, what did I do? I was working at Home Depot, and one of the guys there was just got out of the army, and he like, yo, you ever thought about going to the army? So, of course, being a bigger dude, I had to do some running. So I did some running with the Marine Corps recruiter because I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to be an embassy guard because the Marine Corps is the men's department of the Navy, right?
Oh
So,
yes. Yes, I've heard.
but so I was thinking,
I
man,
didn't know
those
men ate
uniforms,
crayons, but it's okay.
those uniforms are nice. They get to go sit in an embassy. I thought, man, that sounded pretty cool. Until the fact they said you had to be an infantryman for a couple of years before you might get selected to go on embassy guard detail. I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. So I walked across the hall to the Army. Hey, Army, what do you got? And they said, oh, you want to be a military police officer? Let's go. So I signed up. I was in the delayed entry program for like a month or something, and then I ended up at Fort Leonard Wood. Um, then the story kind of just builds from there, right? I was only in the Army for 5 years. Uh, but I went to Korea, came back, worked law enforcement here on JBLM. So the common myth is that the MP or the security forces, whatever, master at arms, what does the Navy call it? Something like
Yeah,
that.
master at arms. Yeah.
Is the security guard, right?
Mm.
Well, let me be the person to tell you. Here at JBLM, we went to INS. We had drugs coming in the gates. We had murders. We had child abuse, domestic violence. Anything you could think about in the real world, it happened right here. Like, I remember vividly. There's a lady arguing with the neighbor because the husbands were deployed, and she was talking to her man, and she went in there and like broke their fish tank. The house was a disaster. The 4-year-old daughter was sitting on the couch. The one lady stabbed the other lady in the side, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just bleeding a little bit," and she had a gash in her stomach. Like, what is this? So that
Yeah.
painted the picture. Like, I do not want to do this in the real world if it's this bad on post, right? So um, then after working the road for a little bit, I deployed to Iraq. I was there for 15 months. Um, we had a Iraqi police team. We trained Iraqi police officers, what's called a pit team. So we ran pit teams. Our company was responsible for Fallujah to Al Qaim. So that's a Syrian border, Fallujah. And I was in a little town called Habaniya. Our good friend Elliot was in Habaniya. I was in Habaniya for the first month, and I didn't even know that Elliot and I were in the same place until just like 2 MVP huddles ago.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so we went la di da, went to Haditha just after some crazy stuff went on there. Um, so we went on walking patrols every day, lifted weights, smoked hookah, burned shit, like did all the good stuff.
Mm.
Then I came home and I was trying to get out. I wanted out of the Army. So to gloss over a few things, not to get in too much detail, I in Korea, I had some of the best and worst experiences of my military time. So I like to drink a little bit. So I went to ASAP a couple times. Command referred to ASAP for fighting. Lost some rank, got some rank, lost some rank again. And the same kind of thing happened in Fort Lewis. So get in trouble. I remember I wrecked a vehicle just before our deployment, and the sergeant major told me I was lower than whale shit. I was the epitome of the Army. You will never drive again a day in the Army, right? Then I was a driver in Iraq like 60 days later. So, bro, you tell me how I'll never drive in the Army. So, like, it was that. And then that was um, the reason why when I come back, I was like, well, maybe I am a fat piece of shit. Maybe I do want to be out of the Army. Well, get me out of here. So I got out of the Army. And then all of my friends deployed to Afghanistan shortly after. And I was able to find a way to go to Afghanistan as a civilian. It just so happens they like to pay some people a lot of money to go do some jobs of it was too expensive to train military members to do like mass training. So I went and operated the counter rocket artillery mortar systems in the Army. It's a 14 Juliet. It's air defense artillery system that detects rockets and mortars. So I got to go up. I was on the Pakistan border, northeast of Jalalabad, a little fob called Fob Joyce, tracking mortars and rockets. So we got shot at a lot. And
Yeah.
when I'm saying a lot, that might be an understatement. We got shot at a lot. I made my money, right? So that's what I did. And I remember I wrote a check for my first house, like a big lump sum. And I was like, dude, if I could ever have that much money in the bank account to write a check that big again, it was pretty awesome, you know?
Oh, wow. So
Um,
just so I understand, the weapon system you're operating, it's more further range than the CRAM because the CRAM only goes out to like 1 mile.
CRAM is what I operated.
Oh, okay.
But so civilians in the battlefield cannot operate CRAM systems with the failing weapon. So we didn't
Okay.
have the weapon. All we were responsible for is the early warn system.
Mm.
So I don't know what you know about CRAM, but the LCMR systems, we're tracking 20 clicks, bro. It's not just a mile.
Oh,
We're
okay.
track. We are tracking like a VCR, like that.
Excellent.
It is. Yeah, I remember specifically a couple warnings we gave. I gave a 20-second warn on a couple 103s, and I had a guy come in and he told me, he come into the talk shaking, his hands were just trembling, and he's like, a KBR contractor. He goes, "Who hit the button?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Who hit the button?" "Bro, it was me. Like, I'm sitting by the system, dude. It was me. What's up?" He goes, "Man, those 3 rounds just hit the generator I was working on, and you just saved me, bro." Like, his hands were shaking, his body was trembling, and he's like starting to cry. He's like, "I have to get a new generator. I can't fix that one, but you literally just saved me." So it was like those kind of days, and they happen every day, So it was like,
Yeah.
and 3139 was a grid coordinates. I know exactly where we were taking rounds from. And then like the Pakistan border, we had the raid cameras, so we were able to watch the troops. We'd pull Overwatch with the raid cams. We'd be have guys in the towers communicating with them while they might be engaging the enemy or something, and we could watch it like it was right there. And then you go outside and actually look up there with binoculars, like, oh yeah, it is going on. Like it's real life. It's not just the TV. So I did that. Supported some real good guys from Hawaii and Fort Carson, from the Cacti 235, and from the guys at Fort Carson in 212. So it was cool. When I was in the Army, I learned the MP way, and then when I was a civilian, I learned how the real rest of the military works as a cohesive unit. So that's one thing. Like, oftentimes, say your job, like my dad, he was a boiler tech in the Navy. Boiler tech was his gig, right? That was his job. He might not have known what an aviation structural mechanic does, or what a firefighter does. Like, they had their subtaskings and stuff, but you don't really know the other lanes, because you're so singular in your job set. It's like an HR guy doesn't know what the operations guy does. Like, you might know, but you don't know, right? So I learned that. Come back, going to college. I was delivering car parts in Seattle. So I was working for a place called Seattle Automotive Distributing, delivering car parts with some grimy Vietnam vets. I think they were more interested in smoking their cigarettes and sitting outside complaining than delivering car parts. So, but I made some good friends, right? And they're like, "Bro, you got to get out of here. Like, you have to leave this place." So I was going to college while I was working there, and a friend of mine, a founder of PNW Vets, he actually started PNW Vets. Here's how. His name's Josh Penner. He's the mayor of a city here in Ording, Washington. He's the mayor of the city. If you look at PNW Vets, when you're actually on the URL, it says facebook.com/groups/WA Veterans Help. So Josh had the outreach job before me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get this WA Veterans Help page started." And then when I came along, I was like, "Yo, PNW Vets, man, it's about branding. Let's do it." So we changed the name. So the name on the page is PNW Vets, but up top it says WA Veterans Help. That's the actual URL for the Facebook group that he started. So Josh got me into doing some veteran outreach. I did that for a little bit, and then while going to school, completing that degree, and you found out, I went to work at St. Vincent de Paul at the food bank in Seattle for a little bit. It wasn't my jam, so I was trying to get on with the VA. My friend Brian Milcraic, he started this program called Veteran Rights, part of Task Force 12. They bring veterans out, do very awesome healing type practices. Ryan said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to the External Affairs Director of the VA Regional Office." So I talked to him. He encouraged me to apply. I didn't have a college degree. I applied. I didn't get accepted. So I was like, "Man, here it is. Didn't get accepted again. Yep, I get it. Cool." And then I took a job with the PVA, with Paralyzed Veterans of America. I worked in the spinal cord injury unit at the Seattle VA hospital. What people don't understand about PVA is the Paralyzed Veterans of America are integrated within the spinal cord injury units at Palo Alto, Seattle, multiple VA hospitals. They have that VSO, a veteran service officer, that's integrated into their system, and they specialize in spinal cord injury, and the other two things are ALS and MS. So ALS, MS, and spinal cord injury. If you have any veteran that needs help with those three contentions and they're not working with the PVA, they're doing themselves an injustice, because those ALS, MS, and spinal cord injury are the reasons why PVA is there. And the whole history of PVA started as a special project within Wounded Warrior Project. There's a lot of, or it was the other way. Wounded Warrior Project started with PVA special project, giving backpacks to soldiers. There's history between the two, is what I'm trying to say. So I did that for a minute, and it was really just a minute, because I finished college at the same time I was working there. And then I got a job with the Seattle regional office, doing strategic outreach, working on the public contact team. So when you don't get your VA disability check and you think it's the VA's fault, people come in and cuss me out, like, you're the reason I'm not getting paid. I'm like, no, you're the reason you overdrafted your account and then changed bank accounts and didn't tell the VA. Come on, man. It's not my fault. Like, it's your fault. So we would get yelled at, cussed at. It was wild. But I was able to help create a strategic outreach plan targeting incarcerated veterans. I had the opportunity to go inside some RJC in Kent and actually work within the veterans pod. Did some LGBTQ outreach, some Native American outreach, making some really good friends at some of the tribes. I went to Veteran Sweats. I got a medallion from the Suquamish tribe, from their veteran elder. It was cool to kind of get out and meet these other people in the community doing great things. And then I rode the bus to downtown from Federal Way Transit Center, bus 577. Took 577 to downtown Seattle for 3 years. And a good friend of mine, she was the previous Gold Star Mother of Washington. Her name's Monica McNeil. We had, I guess she's like my second mother. My mom lives in Oregon, and Monica's like my mom here, right? So I got a couple of veterans and people that I'm like, these are my family members here, but they're not really my family, but they are. Kind of
I think we all
thing.
have that, and it's so important.
Yeah. So she goes, hey, there's this job. You need to apply for it at Madigan, working with transitioning service members. So it was called the WTB then, Warrior Transition Battalion. And if you know the history of that, right, Walter Reed, there's some stuff that went on at Walter Reed back a long time ago. And they said, oh, we need to take better care of our soldiers that are coming home, going through this medical evaluation process. So they stood up all these WTBs. So now they're called the Soldier Recovery Unit. And we have 14 Soldier Recovery Units throughout the Army. And I'm just lucky enough to be a transition coordinator. So I help soldiers identify career and education goals when they transition. So that's what I do now. So now I want to tell you about PNW Vets real quick, right? PNW Vets, and so like everything else, I looked up some interesting tools. So I don't know if anybody that's listening to this, or if you are familiar, if you own a public group within Facebook, you can look at Insight. And within the Insight tools, they have growth, engagement, etc. Right? So just like I think I looked, and it was the group was started about 9 years ago. So if I backdate myself to 9 years, I was probably doing outreach. And at that time, I was working with a lot of homeless veterans. I'm not saying anything's bad about homeless veterans in any way, shape, or form. Everybody has their moments. But I can tell you, as a provider, I really got burned out, right? I had that provider burnout type scenario where I felt everybody wants housing. I'm not going to be able to get everybody housing. I need a career change. But what I can do is look out for veterans that I felt were like myself, that might have identified like myself. And by that, I'm saying, yeah, we had some rocky times, a lot of rocky times, but I also was able to transition out while getting a job and going to school. And I had a day job. I owned a home. I had a family. I have a family. right? So I was like, I need to find a way where I could find veterans that I could go drink beer with at a brewery or wherever, or the VFW. Like, where could I find veterans that are like me, which I think is air quote successful transition, had a successful transition, and I could get them engaged in other programs in the community. So that was kind of the basis of PNW Vets. How do we bring like-minded individuals together to make sure that you have the best resources the quickest possible way?
Because
So
you'll be
that's
able to help
that's
people that have similarities to you way better than you be able to even relate to somebody or understand their experience that they're having.
yeah. So that's what we did, and um, so in the PNW Vets realm, I've had very good people that have helped me with. I didn't have any admin team for a little while, right? I thought, oh, me and Josh, we can handle this. We don't need an admin team. And then as soon as it got like over 3,000 or something, it's kind of hard to keep up with the day in and day out. And then like the spammy, look at this porn site that comes across the thing, like, what is this? So then we had to go into all the different tools and kind of filter some things out and set the group rules and set these. I'm not going to sell stuff. I'm not going to put up GoFundMe. So there's rules when people join the page, and you got to answer the questions to get on the page. Um, but then, like right now, we have there's 4 of us that are admin, and the admin team is from a guy that's Oconus, who lives over in Japan. He helps us. Ray, he helps us with a lot of the background, the admin stuff, the rules, and he served in the Marine Corps with Josh Penner and Josh. And then Thomas DeGiorgio is a part of the admin team, and you had the opportunity to meet Thomas,
Hmm.
and we connected with him when he was at UW and TCC doing some really good work with the student veterans um, here locally in Pierce County. So he's one of our admin guys, and we've had others. We've had others that work for the state, work for colleges, um, and it it's just very rewarding when you could look at the information that's provided. And so I hosted a pub crawl, and we had uh, I don't know 30 to 50 veterans walking around downtown Tacoma. Man, we went from Steel Creek to Odd Otter to the office, all these places. Like, we just went from bar to bar. We all had a T-shirt on. We went from bar to bar. Um, and I'm not saying everything in the veteran space is about drinking, but what it is about gathering a community and a safe place where you feel comfortable being around your peers.
Mm.
So, like, I haven't drank beer since 2017, right? So, like, me going to a brewery is pointless. Like, I used to really love beer. Now I don't even drink it, but I'll still go meet a bunch of veterans at a brewery, and I'll have a water with a lemon or something. But um, I still like whiskey and bourbon and scotch, but that's not at a brewery. So it's
Hmm.
like I'm gonna step outside my own comfort zone to go hang out with some guys and gals, because I just know that's usually it's a nice vibe. The community comes together and there's room to talk and things like that. And so we've had pub crawls, socials at breweries, a camp out, barbecues. I've done all these. This COVID kind of really messed it up, right? So I didn't do social gatherings during COVID. Um, I did one kind of PNW Vets meetup where I had VSOs. I called it a VSO meetup. Uh, so VSO, everybody thinks, oh, what VSO? Oh, I'm not a VSO. Well, what does that mean, right? Is that a veteran service officer? Are you accredited veteran service officer? Are you a veteran service organization? Bam, the plot thickens. Do you do claims or do you help people? Like there's or veteran security operations. There's a security company in Puyallup that's armed guards, a bunch of veterans that have the name VSO. So it's like, what is that mean, right? So it's like you really have to dive into what does it mean. And so as a VSO meetup, I said I want everybody that could help a veteran and their families, that's a service provider that wants to hire a veteran, help a veteran, is a veteran, wants to be an advocate, whatever your passion is, if it has to do with the veteran space at all, I want you to come. So I did that a couple summers ago. And then over, I think it was probably Veterans Day week, I got asked about 5 times hey, when are you going to have another one of your meetings? I said, what? I don't know. Leave me alone. Like I have a job and I have a family and my son plays multiple sports and we got to travel to Oregon for fam. So I was like, and so I do things kind of like sporadically. So I just pick a day. I don't know. So I think we had a meeting December 18th or something, I'm just going to pick a day and we're going to go with it. Uh, I used to wear a hat that said, fuck it, run it. Right. Like, I don't know. Let's just pick it out. Whatever.
Yeah.
You want to go shoot? Let's go shoot. You want to go off road and let's go. Who cares? So that's what I did. And then I listened to the people at this meeting, and they're so grateful that we brought this group of people back together. And they're like, Josh, many people have tried and nobody's been successful. How do we continue this? So we decided after talking that we're going to do these PNW Vets Pierce County Coalition meetings the third Wednesday of every month. And no, we don't have a set in stone place that we're going to meet, but I know it's the third Wednesday of the month. So if it's at the VFW, if it's at AMVETS, if it's at a nonprofit or a library or a restaurant, where like the sky is the limit when it comes to meeting. Like when it gets nice, we could even host up in the parking lot at Emerald Queen Casino or something. I don't know. Like it doesn't a park. It could be anywhere. But the sole purpose of it is to build those relationships and strengthen the community. Because if you have a relationship with the person you're going to refer someone to, then you have a sense, like it makes your heart feel like, oh, I know if I tell Eddie that Eddie's going to take the best care of them, like I would my family. I know he's going to look out for them. So we did that. We had another meeting in January. Now I've had requests from Washington County, Oregon. If you don't know, that's where Hillsboro, Oregon is. We had people in Hillsboro, Oregon say, hey, can you help me start a county meeting? To Eastern Washington, up and down the I-5 corridor from Whatcom County to Clark County, Grays Harbor County, that's where Aberdeen is. So it's like there's all these counties are like, hey, that's a good idea. And what I find, there's some common misconceptions, and this is Eddie's podcast, so I can talk about these misconceptions and not
Hell
feel
yeah,
guilty.
air it out.
So a lot of times in the veteran space, people get stuck on this, oh, you're taking my veteran. It's not talked about, but I know it's there, right? This, oh, you're going to help them with a claim and I'm not going to get numbers. Oh, you're going to take my money from my state grant or my county grant or my nonprofit grant. You're going to take my money. And I don't know if I want to be in the same room as you. They're stealing my veterans. They're stealing my demographics. And I know from doing outreach in the nonprofit world that a lot of nonprofits thrive off of this demographic data, this data mining of the company I worked for got hundreds of thousands of dollars from the county. And we reported demographics, and that's how we justified the money that we continue to get. So I know, like, hey, I'm not knocking it, right? I want every veteran business to be successful. But there's a point when you have to lower your guard, lower that expectation. I am not here for any reason other than connecting you together. So if you work for Eddie's Veteran Services and Josh has Josh's Veteran Services, if we have these things and I'm getting money, you're getting money, we're getting the same pot of money or no money at all, I want to make sure that when this dude needs housing, you're going to get him the best resource in the fewest steps. What does 100%. That look like? So that's why I feel like PNW Vets is just that. It's a Facebook group. It's a Facebook group that I had t-shirts made a long time ago that some people still have. Like, what are we? We're federal employees, county employees, state employees, city representatives. The sky's the limit. Disabled veterans that don't do anything but help other veterans. So it's like when these meetings come together, there's all those people in the same room. And when you don't mix necessarily titles or what agency. Yes, the people say, I ask where they work so that I know how we connect each other, right? We ask the people's why they do what they do, why they work where they work, where they live, why do they live there? So it's really, you kind of get in the weeds of understanding them as a person.
Mm.
not just an agency. So that's why, and like just looking at looking at this insight, right? I could tell you just at a glance, 5,000 ish veterans that are there right now, that the most popular day for looking for resources and posting veteran resources is a Thursday, right? That on Thursdays at 8 o'clock at night is the time that people are usually engaging. And then on Sundays in the morning and at 8 o'clock at night, people are looking for resources. And then there's all types of the top posts have to do with the lockdown that happened at American Lake just recently,
Mm.
to the veteran meeting, bringing veterans fishing, a memorial service for a veteran. So those are just the top things that have really engaged um, over the past couple weeks. It's actually the last 28 days. And I have my top providers. Oh, Eddie, you're a top contributor now. In the last 14 weeks, you're a top contributor.
Because I
You and
care
a
so
couple,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
And then like the gender gap is 66% males, 34% female, and it has the age breakdown. Or it looks like we're kind of crushing that 35 to 44 age range. And you know what?
Excellent.
35 to 44 could be people like me.
Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, it could be people like me, but it could be retirees that were retired sergeant majors 34 years or 44 years old, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? And then our top cities right now, we got Tacoma, Seattle, Lacey, Olympia. And it only makes sense, right? Where do we live? How are we
Yeah.
able to get that out? And we're spread out through countries even, you know, and it's crazy to see. Yeah, the top, what is this? Spanaway, Fort Lewis, South Hill, Lakewood, Puyallup, Graham, Olympia, Lacey, Seattle. So it's very strong here. But I
Mm-hmm.
really, really want to build Oregon and Idaho. I want to make sure that in Oregon, where there's still great nonprofits doing great work, but there's no active duty military installation. You know, over in Warrenton, there's a National Guard throughout the state. Hermiston, Oregon, there's an armory. There's some good guys in the east side of Oregon, as well as Washington. So I really want to take this model, and that's what I was saying. I might have told you this. Make this I-5 connection, right? So we're covering Canada to California in imagine one day, 10, 20 years from now, you could say on the third Wednesday of every month at 6 o'clock, whether you're in Salem, Oregon, or you're in Bellingham, Washington, there's some veterans meeting. And all you got to do is get online and check it out. Where are they at? You know, and have a list of these counties that are engaged and
And it doesn't
having all
cost
the,
anything.
yeah,
It's just out of the
nothing,
kindness of people's hearts.
yeah, that want to show up to help,
Mm.
you
I
know?
love that.
So it's it's really cool to see these different, like the insight from the uh, analytics that are on Facebook alone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the whole concept. And so February 15th we'll launch in Thurston County.
Yeah.
Thurston County is going live at the Lacey Veterans Hub. I have a couple people that I've worked with for some time that I know really will share the mission. You know, it's creating that network of support services to help veterans and their families thrive in their community. So yeah, here next month we're going live in Lacey Veterans Hub February 15th, and VFW State Headquarters in Fife, February 15th. And there's some people like continuing that mission. I want to help veterans and family members thrive in their community, and that is the basis of it. And quite frankly, if you know anybody that owns a company, owns a space, would allow some veterans to come into your space and really learn what you do, that's kind of what it is. So starting next month here in Pierce County, we're going to have an agency share, probably 20, 30 minutes, probably 20 minutes talk, 10 minutes question and answer about their organization. What does that look like? And starting in Thurston County and all the counties that'll come, it's really a sit down, discuss your top 3 basic needs for the veteran population in your county. The next month is kind of learn who each other are, build that relationship, share some food, share some thought, and then discuss your why. and then move into the same kind of concept as this lunch and learn concept. And then to kick it all off, February or not February, I haven't set a date, but you know what, Eddie? Let's set a date. Let's say, I told you how I am, bro. This is how I
Yeah.
am. Let's say spring 2023 starts. I think it's March 20th. So let's
Yes.
say March 25th, we're going to have a social at a brewery somewhere in Pierce County, Thurston County, maybe both, right? We're gonna have a get together, a veteran get together in Pierce County, whether it's at my VFW or at Seven Seas Brewery or Fob Brewery, whatever. We're gonna have a get together and call it the spring opener. So it's gonna be PNW Vets spring opener, um, and that will kick off the spring and solidify this meetings that we're having, and give us a time to share outside of a meeting format with each other and kind of really build those relationships. But other than that, man, that's me and PNW Vets. Um, we got some private football lessons to get to tonight, meeting at the church, got all kinds of things going on. So,
Absolutely, man.
uh, yeah.
Well, I definitely appreciate your time breaking down what PNW Vets is and why it's needed and why it can help other people. There's nothing better when people who have like-minded goals, like helping another person, whether they're a vet or not, or the vet or family, Gold Star moms, members in our community that serve the country. They are often neglected and looked over, and we don't have to do that as veterans. We can look after our brothers and sisters. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to help me understand what PNW's vision is for the future and how we can all work together with these different organizations to help just one more person, because I've used it. I believe in your methodology. I used it just last week. Now somebody's for the first time in 10 years going to an apartment and he's overwhelmed. I'm gonna bring him my old air fryer. I'm gonna do a food drive and do something for him, man. So I love it, and thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to hearing your story next week.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.